The streets were slick with rain, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and made you forget what warmth felt like. People hurried past, umbrellas tilted low, eyes fixed on their phones. No one noticed her. No one ever did. Sarah Mitchell pulled her thin jacket tighter, her fingers trembling as they brushed against something unexpected on the sidewalk. A wallet, thick, expensive leather stuffed with cash, enough to feed her for months, enough to get her off the streets even just for a little while. Her stomach twisted with hunger, with desperation. But then she saw it, the photo tucked inside. A smiling family, a man in a sharp suit, his arm around a little girl. And in that moment, Sarah faced a choice: walk away and change her life, or stay and change his. City buzzed around her, indifferent. Neon signs flickered through the downpour, casting jagged reflections in the puddles at her feet. Sarah's breath came fast. She could already picture it: the hot meal, the safe night in a motel, the relief of not shivering for once. But the man in the photo, he looked like someone who'd panic over a missing wallet, like someone with people counting on him. She wiped rain from her face, her heart pounding. Every instinct told her to run. Instead, she zipped the wallet into her jacket, shielding it from the rain, and stepped deeper into the storm. She'd wait. She'd return it, even if it cost her everything. Somewhere across town, Daniel Carter was tearing apart his office, his pulse roaring in his ears. The wallet wasn't just money, it held his daughter's hospital ID, the last photo they'd taken before her surgery. His assistant's voice crackled through the phone. The cafe said no one turned it in. Daniel slammed his fist on the desk. It was gone, and with it the last shred of hope that today wouldn't destroy him. He didn't know it yet, but his path was already crossing with a woman the world had thrown away. And before the night was over, both of them would learn just how much one act of honesty could shatter the walls between them. The wallet felt heavy in Sarah's hands, like it carried more than just money, it carried a life. She ducked under the awning of a closed bakery, her back pressed against the cold brick as she carefully opened it. The first thing that hit her was the smell of expensive leather, so different from the damp cardboard of her makeshift bed. Then she saw the cash, crisp bills, more than she'd held in years. Her fingers twitched. She could disappear right now. Buy a bus ticket, find a cheap room, finally sleep somewhere safe. But beneath the money, something else caught her eye: a photo. A little girl with braces, grinning next to the man from the cafe, his tie slightly crooked like he'd been hugged mid-photo. Sarah's throat tightened. She knew that look. The way his arm curled around the girl's shoulders, protective and proud. It was the same way her father had held her back when she still had a family. Rain dripped from her hair as she counted the bills with shaking hands. $2,000, enough to vanish, enough to stop being invisible. She glanced around, no cameras, no witnesses. The city swallowed secrets every day. What was one more? But then her thumb brushed the hospital ID tucked behind the photo. Children's Memorial patient Emily Carter. The date was tomorrow. Sarah's breath caught. That man wasn't just rich, he was desperate. She'd seen that hollow look before in the mirror. Without thinking, she snapped the wallet shut. The cafe door chimed in her memory. He'd been rushing, distracted, spilling coffee on his coat. Not some careless elite, just a scared father. Wind howled as Sarah stepped back into the storm. Her stomach growled, a sharp reminder of the meals that money could buy. But another hunger gnawed deeper, the kind no amount of cash could fill. She'd been a nurse once, knew the weight of a child's medical bracelet, knew how one missing ID could mean delayed treatment, frantic phone calls, a little girl crying in a hospital hallway. Her feet moved before her mind could protest, carrying her back to the cafe. The manager glared when she entered, already waving her off. "No handouts," he barked. Sarah didn't flinch. "I need to find the man who left this," she said, holding up the wallet. Her voice surprised her, clear, steady, like it used to be. Outside, the rain turned to needles. Sarah hunched near the entrance, her clothes soaked through. Minutes bled into an hour. The cafe closed, lights flickered off. Still, she waited. Her toes went numb in her worn-out sneakers. This is crazy, she thought. He's not coming back. But just as she started to doubt, a black car screeched to the curb. The door flew open, and there he was, the man from the photo, his suit rumpled, eyes wild. He didn't even see her at first, just dropped to his knees, scanning the gutter. Sarah's pulse roared in her ears. This was it. She could still walk away. Instead, she took a step forward, the wallet outstretched. "Sir," her voice cracked, "I think this belongs to you." Daniel's head snapped up at the sound of her voice, his eyes locking onto the wallet in her hand. For a heartbeat, the entire street seemed to freeze, the honking cars, the hissing rain, even Sarah's shallow breaths hanging visible in the cold air. Then his face twisted with something ugly. "You," he spat, surging to his feet. His expensive shoes splashed through the gutter as he advanced, his voice trembling with fury. "How much did you take?" Sarah flinched as he snatched the wallet from her, his fingers brushing against her cracked, reddened skin. She watched numbly as he tore it open, thumbing through the bills with frantic precision. The accusation hung between them like a slap. The streetlight above them flickered, casting jagged shadows across Daniel's face as he counted. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how she must look, hair matted with rain, clothes reeking of damp cardboard, the undeniable stench of homelessness clinging to her. She saw the exact moment his suspicion hardened into certainty. "200 short," he hissed, snapping the wallet shut. His lip curled. "I suppose that's your finder's fee?" Sarah's stomach dropped. She hadn't taken a single bill, hadn't even considered it after seeing that hospital ID. But the truth withered in her throat as his phone suddenly blared to life. A child's voice, tinny through the speaker. "Daddy, the nurse says we need my bracelet." Daniel's face went ashen. He turned away from Sarah, his shoulders hunched against the rain. "I'm coming, Peanut. Daddy's got it." The tenderness in his voice made Sarah's chest ache. Then he whirled back, his momentary vulnerability replaced by cold fury. "You could have ruined everything," he whispered, shaking. "Do you have any idea what this wallet means?" Sarah opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The rain dripped off his designer watch as he checked the time, his jaw working. She saw the calculations flashing behind his eyes, the missed appointments, the frantic search, the precious minutes ticking down. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. "I should call the police." Something inside Sarah snapped. 8 months of being invisible, of shoulders turning away, of muttered slurs. It all boiled over in that moment. "I waited here for 2 hours," she said, her voice raw. 2 hours in the freezing rain for you." Her hands trembled at her sides, not from cold now, but from something hotter, fiercer. "I saw your daughter's hospital pass. I know what tomorrow is." Daniel froze. Sarah took a shaky step forward, rainwater running down her face like tears. "You think I wanted your money? I used to be an ER nurse. I know exactly how long they'll make a little girl wait without proper ID." The street seemed to hold its breath. A siren wailed in the distance. Daniel's grip on the wallet loosened slightly, his eyes darting between Sarah's threadbare jacket and her steady gaze. The silence stretched, broken only by the rhythmic drip of water from a broken gutter overhead, then so quiet she almost missed it. You're a nurse." The anger in his voice had cracked, revealing something far more vulnerable beneath. Sarah nodded, exhaustion suddenly crashing over her. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her lightheaded. She barely registered the warmth trickling down her temple until Daniel's expression changed. "You're bleeding," he said, his voice strange. Sarah touched her forehead, her fingers coming away red. Must have hit it on the bakery's fire escape while waiting. The world tilted slightly as she swayed on her feet. The last thing she saw before her knees buckled was Daniel's arm shooting out to catch her, the same arm that had held his daughter in that photo, now reaching for the woman he'd just accused of theft. As darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, Sarah thought dimly how ironic it was. The first human touch she'd felt in months, and it came from a man who'd looked at her like she was nothing. Then everything went black. Sterile scent of antiseptic stung Sarah's nostrils before she even opened her eyes. Fluorescent lights burned overhead, too bright, too clean. A hospital. Panic jolted through her. Not again, not after last time. She tried to sit up, but a firm hand pressed her back against crisp sheets. "Easy," came Daniel's voice, closer than she expected. Sarah blinked, her vision swimming into focus. He sat slumped in a plastic chair beside the bed, his suit jacket missing, tie loosened. The wallet lay open on the bedside table, the photo of his daughter facing up. A thin line of stitches pulled at Sarah's temple when she turned her head. "You passed out," Daniel said flatly. "Doctor says it's malnutrition, and this." He held up a crumpled prescription bottle Sarah recognized instantly. The label had faded, but she knew each pill by heart. Painkillers, the last remnants of her old life. Sarah's throat closed. She could still hear the squeal of brakes, the crunch of metal, the screams from the backseat of that Uber, the accident that shattered her spine and killed the pregnant woman she'd been trying to stabilize during her ambulance ride to work. The hospital had fired her after the drug test came back positive. "They're prescribed," she whispered, but the words sounded hollow even to her. Daniel's eyes darkened. He knew addiction when he saw it. The silence between them grew heavy, broken only by the beep of machines. Then so quiet she almost missed it. "Why didn't you take the money?" Sarah studied the ceiling, the cracks in the tiles. She could lie, say she feared cameras or cops, but the exhaustion ran too deep. "Your daughter's ID," she said simply. "I've seen too many kids turned away because paperwork went missing." Something flickered across Daniel's face. He reached into the wallet and pulled out a folded slip of paper Sarah hadn't noticed before, a hospital admission form with today's date stamped in red. "Leukemia," he said, the word rough in his throat. "First round of chemo tomorrow." He rubbed his eyes, suddenly looking every one of his 50-odd years. "That wallet had the last photo we took before she lost her hair." Nurse bustled in, checking Sarah's IV with practiced efficiency. She didn't glance at Daniel's Rolex or Sarah's grime-stained nails, just noted the clipboard and left. The normality of it made Sarah want to laugh or scream. Daniel watched the door swing shut before speaking again. "You really waited in the rain for 2 hours?" It wasn't a question. Sarah nodded, her fingers plucking at the thin hospital gown. The motion made her sleeve ride up, revealing the jagged scar that ran from wrist to elbow, a souvenir from the accident. Daniel's breath caught. Jesus. Story spilled out then in broken fragments. The late-night shift at County General, the drunk driver who T-boned their ambulance, the way the pregnant woman's hand had gone limp in hers. "Workers' comp denied my claim," Sarah muttered, tracing the scar. "Said I shouldn't have been riding along off-duty. The pills, they were supposed to be temporary." She met Daniel's gaze for the first time. 8 months ago, I was saving lives. Now I can't even get a job washing dishes." Something changed in Daniel's face then. He stood abruptly, chair scraping, and paced to the window. The city glittered below, indifferent. When he turned back, his voice was different, softer, but with an edge that made Sarah sit up straighter. "You said you were an ER nurse. What specialty?" Sarah frowned. "Trauma, but I did rotations in." "Pediatric oncology," Daniel finished for her. He pulled a business card from his pocket and slid it across the bed tray. The embossed letters gleamed under the lights. Daniel Carter, Chief of Medicine, Children's Memorial Hospital. Sarah's heart stopped. The pieces clicked together, his knowledge of her meds, the way he'd commanded the ER staff. Not just a worried father, a doctor, and not just any doctor. The man who'd built the best cancer ward on the East Coast. Daniel's next words dropped like stones into the silence. "We've got a rehab program for medical professionals, and a shortage of nurses who can handle port insertions without scaring the kids." Sarah's vision blurred. This had to be a cruel joke, but Daniel was already shrugging into his jacket, his movements brisk now, purposeful. "Be at this address Monday at 7 a.m., he said, nodding to the card. "You'll need scrubs." Sarah's laugh came out half-sob. "You can't be serious, look at me." She gestured to her ragged clothes piled on the chair. Daniel didn't even glance. "I am looking," he said quietly, "and I'm seeing the nurse who stood in the rain for a stranger's kid." He paused at the door, hand on the knob. "Oh, and Sarah," his smile was tired but real, "that $200 was in my coat pocket the whole time." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Sarah alone with the hum of machines and the impossible weight of a second chance. Outside, dawn painted the sky in streaks of gold and pink, the first sunrise she'd seen in months that didn't fill her with dread. Somewhere in the building, a little girl with braces was waking up to fight her greatest battle. And somehow, against all odds, Sarah would be there to help. She reached for the business card, her fingers steady for the first time in a long, long while. The alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., shattering the silence of Sarah's tiny studio apartment. She bolted upright, heart pounding. For one disorienting second, she thought she was back in her old life, rushing to make the early shift at County General. Then her eyes adjusted to the unfamiliar walls, the second-hand furniture, the neatly folded set of scrubs on the dresser. Her hands trembled as she reached for them, running her fingers over the embroidered hospital logo. Children's Memorial. Real. This was real. Mirror showed a stranger, hair freshly cut, dark circles fading, scars still visible but no longer hidden. She fastened her ID badge with clumsy fingers. Sarah Mitchell, RN. The weight of it against her chest threatened to buckle her knees. 6 weeks of rehab, of grueling physical therapy to prove she could stand 12-hour shifts again. 6 weeks of Daniel checking in daily, never coddling but never letting her quit either. The memory of their last conversation echoed in her ears as she grabbed her keys. "You don't owe me anything," he'd said, that familiar sternness softening at the edges. "But those kids, they'll owe you everything." Hospital lobby buzzed with morning chaos, but Sarah's feet carried her unerringly to the elevators. She knew this dance, the beep of badges against scanners, the smell of disinfectant layered over fear, the way staff nodded to each other without breaking stride. Yet nothing could prepare her for the pediatric oncology ward. The walls were painted with cartoon animals, the nurses' station littered with stickers and stuffed toys. A far cry from the trauma unit's controlled chaos. Her stomach twisted. Could she really do this? "Mitchell, you're with me?" A petite woman in rainbow scrubs waved her over. Lisa, charge nurse, her badge read. "Dr. Carter said you're cleared for ports. We've got a full schedule, so no time for nerves." Lisa's no-nonsense tone brooked no argument, but her eyes lingered on Sarah's white-knuckled grip on the chart. "First one's in room 312, Emily Carter." Name hit like a punch. Sarah froze. Of course it would be her. The universe had a cruel sense of irony. The chart in her hand suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds, treatment plans, blood counts, a photo of a bald, smiling girl clipped to the front. The same braces from the wallet photo, but the sparkle in her eyes dimmed by rounds of chemo. Sarah's breath came too fast. She couldn't do this. Not to Daniel's daughter. Not when. "Sarah?" The voice came from behind her, quiet but unmistakable. Daniel stood there in his white coat, stethoscope draped around his neck. He looked exhausted, but his gaze was steady. "I didn't request you for this," he said, "but the team assigned you anyway, if you're not ready." "I am," the words surprised even her. Sarah straightened her shoulders. "I've placed hundreds of ports." Daniel studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'll be outside. Not I'll supervise, not I'll step in if you falter, just trust, raw and terrifying." The room was brighter than she expected, sunlight streaming through half-open blinds. Emily sat cross-legged on the bed, dwarfed by a dinosaur-print hospital gown. She glanced up from her coloring book, and Sarah's heart shattered. Those were Daniel's eyes staring back at her. "Are you the new nurse?" Emily asked, her voice small but curious. "Dad says you're the best with needles." Something cracked open in Sarah's chest. She reached for the gloves, her movements automatic now. "I'll make this quick, okay? You like dinosaurs?" Emily nodded, clutching a worn Stegosaurus plush. "Tell me about this guy while I work." The familiar routine steadied her. Alcohol swabs, the cool press of ultrasound to find the vein, Emily's chatter filling the silence. "His name is Spike. He protects me from bad dreams." Sarah's hands didn't shake as she slid the needle in, as she threaded the catheter with practiced ease. Emily barely flinched. You're right, the girl whispered as Sarah secured the dressing. That didn't hurt at all. Outside the door, Daniel stood with his forehead pressed against the wall, shoulders shaking. When he turned, the raw gratitude in his eyes brought Sarah to her knees inside. No words passed between them. None were needed. The rest of the day blurred, ports accessed, IVs started, a dozen small hands clinging to hers, but it was the last patient who broke her. A teenage boy, sullen and scared, his hoodie pulled low over a scalp patchy with hair loss. "Whatever," he muttered when she approached. "Just get it over with." Sarah paused, then before she could second-guess herself, she rolled up her sleeve. The boy's eyes widened at the jagged scar. "Car accident," she said simply. "Hurt like hell, but look at me now." A beat of silence, then impossibly the ghost of a smile. "Metal as fuck," he said and offered his arm. By shift's end, Sarah's feet ached, her back screamed, and her heart was fuller than it had been in years. She leaned against the nurse's station, watching the sunset paint the ward in gold. A cup of coffee appeared beside her. Daniel took the spot next to her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. "Welcome back, Nurse Mitchell," he said quietly. And for the first time since the accident, Sarah believed she was exactly where she was meant to be. 3 months later, Sarah stood in front of the hospital's annual gala crowd, the spotlight warming her face as Daniel finished his introduction. "And so I'm honored to present this year's Hope Award to the nurse who taught us all what second chances really mean, Sarah Mitchell." The applause roared through the ballroom, a sea of sequins and tuxedos rising to their feet. Sarah smoothed her emerald green dress, bought with her first real paycheck, and stepped to the podium. The award glinted in her hands, heavier than she expected. Searched the crowd and found Emily first, grinning from the front table with Spike the dinosaur perched proudly beside her plate. The girl's hair had started growing back, soft brown curls framing her face. Next to her, Daniel stood with one hand on his daughter's shoulder, his usual stoic expression softened by something dangerously close to pride. Sarah's throat tightened. 6 months ago, she'd been sleeping under a bridge. Now these people, this brilliant, broken, beautiful family, had folded her into their lives like she'd always belonged. "Night I found Dr. Carter's wallet," Sarah began, her voice steady in the microphone. "I hadn't spoken to my own family in over a year." The room quieted. Shame is a powerful silencer, but what I've learned at Children's Memorial is that our scars, the visible ones and the ones we hide, aren't weaknesses. They're proof we survived. She caught the teenage chemo patient's eye across the room, saw him subtly roll up his sleeve to show his Newport scar to the girl beside him. Sarah winked at him before continuing. "This award belongs to every kid on the 7th floor who taught me how to fight, to every nurse who didn't judge my past, and to the doctor," her voice caught just slightly, "who saw a person worth saving when I'd forgotten how to look for one." Daniel's knuckles whitened around his water glass. Emily beamed like she'd just won the award herself. The after-party swirled around her, donors praising her work, interns asking for advice, a local news crew requesting an interview. Through it all, Daniel appeared at her elbow every 20 minutes like clockwork, replacing her champagne with water, steering overeager board members away. "You're worse than a bodyguard," Sarah laughed during one such intervention. Daniel adjusted his cufflinks, the ghost of a smile playing at his lips. "You're a terrible liar when you're tired. I can see you counting the minutes until escape." It wasn't wrong. At precisely 10:15 p.m., Sarah slipped out a side door into the hospital gardens. The September air carried the first hint of autumn, crisp against her bare arms. She kicked off her heels and sank onto a bench, the award gleaming in her lap. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind her. "Knew I'd find you here." Daniel dropped onto the bench beside her, his bow tie undone, tuxedo jacket long abandoned. Up close, she could see the exhaustion lining his face, the endless hospital hours, the single dad struggles, the weight of so many lives in his hands. Without thinking, Sarah reached over and straightened his crooked collar. His breath hitched at the contact. "You never told me," he said quietly, "why you really waited that night." The garden's fairy lights reflected in his glasses, hiding his eyes. Sarah traced the engraving on her award. "Because no one had looked at me like a human being in 8 months," she admitted. "And when I saw that photo of Emily, I wanted to remember what it felt like to matter." Fireworks exploded overhead suddenly, the gala's grand finale painting the sky in bursts of gold and blue. In the flashes of light, Sarah saw Daniel studying her with an expression she couldn't name. "Sarah Mitchell," he murmured, almost to himself, "who knew my life would change because I dropped my wallet in the rain." Laughter bubbled out of her then, bright and unexpected. Daniel joined in, his shoulder warm against hers. Somewhere inside, Emily was probably begging the catering staff for extra cake. Somewhere downtown, a homeless woman was finding shelter for the night because of the rehab program Sarah had helped expand. And right here, under a sky full of fireworks, 2 broken people sat side by side, not fixed, not perfect, but healing. Sarah tilted her face to the stars, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The award beside her read, "For extraordinary compassion in the face of adversity." But as Daniel's pinky finger brushed against hers on the bench, just once, fleeting, she thought maybe the real prize had been the family she'd found along the way. The last firework faded, leaving only the hum of distant music and the scent of gardenias in the air. Neither of them moved. Somewhere ahead lay paperwork and morning rounds and chemotherapy schedules. But for now, in this quiet corner of the world, it was enough just to sit together in the dark, no longer alone. Video fades in on Sarah sitting in the hospital garden, sunlight dappling through the leaves behind her. She's back in scrubs now, the emerald gala dress replaced by the familiar blue of her nursing uniform. A faint scar still traces her hairline, the last physical reminder of that rainy night. She smiles directly into the camera, the kind of smile that reaches her eyes. "Every day we walk past stories like mine," she says, her voice warm but firm. "The homeless veteran outside your coffee shop, the single mom counting change at the grocery store, that coworker who always seems just a little too tired." She leans forward slightly the way she does when explaining a treatment plan to nervous parents. "Here, what I learned. Second chances don't come from grand gestures. They come from ordinary people choosing to see each other." Scene cuts to security footage of that fateful night. Sarah's hunched figure waiting outside the cafe, the moment Daniel storms back into frame. Then newer clips, Sarah teaching a group of recovering addicts how to take blood pressure. Emily, now sporting a full head of curls, high-fiving a toddler in the chemo ward. Daniel reviewing charts at the nurse's station, glancing up just long enough to catch Sarah's eye across the room. Back to present-day Sarah. "This isn't just my story," she says, holding up the wallet, worn leather, noticeably emptier than when we first saw it. "It's yours, too." She flips it open to reveal a new photo tucked beside the original. Sarah in scrubs, Emily grinning with Spike the dinosaur, Daniel's arm around them both. "So tell me in the comments, when was the last time you took a chance on someone? Or better yet," she grins, that same spark of mischief she had when facing down Daniel's anger. "When did someone take a chance on you?" The music swells gently as text appears on screen. "Kindness isn't random, it's a choice." The camera pulls back to reveal Sarah walking toward the hospital entrance, where Daniel and Emily wait. Just before the screen fades to black, Emily's voice calls out, "Aunt Sarah, Spike says hurry up or we'll eat your cupcake." Final card appears. Subscribe for more stories that restore faith in humanity. Turn on notifications so you never miss a life-changing moment. In the background, barely audible over the closing music, there's the sound of three people laughing together, the kind of laughter that comes not from perfection but from finding your way home.